the Fan3Cast, dishing out the hottest NASCAR news and views while celebrating the three's historic comeback. Here are your hosts, Michael Metzger and Jason Schultz. Surviving the bumps and rough and tumble Kentucky Speedway was the Sprint Cup Series over the weekend, and we have survived it to bring you the Fan3Cast once again. Jason, we'll start right there with the Quaker State 400. Honestly, not too much that we can really say about this race other than Brad Keselowski put a beat down on the rest of the field.
He certainly did, and you mentioned he survived the rough and tough track, but it was the rough and tough Champagne mile that sent him to the Infield Care Center during his victory celebration, which was a pretty wild story considering all he did throughout the race, and was sidelined by the little cut. Not really cut, it was a major bleeding situation on his hand, so he definitely almost survived the whole Kentucky experience, but he just came up a little short at the end.
Now, he should have probably stuck to a Miller Lite can, or at least maybe had someone else open up the bottle for him, but it was, like you said, a dominating performance for Keselowski. He led 199 of 267 laps. It was a little in doubt whether he could beat Kyle Busch at the end. He was able to overtake him for his 12th career win, second in 2014, and one of the biggest things that stuck out to me in his post-race interview with TNT was he's all about the championship. He went on for a good couple of minutes about how he is focused in on getting a second Sprint Cup Series championship. I don't know if it's a case of Keselowski feeling like he's got a chip on his shoulder because nobody respects him even though he has the championship, but it seems like that group is really gunning to get him a second.
And we saw how dominant he was at Kentucky, which is a mile-and-a-half track, 5-mile-and-a-half track during the chase, and it seemed that like every restart on Saturday night, he would just pull maybe Logano or Busch once in a while would get the lead, but 5 laps in, Keselowski would just storm past him and really dominate until the next caution flag comes out. And so that really showed how much strength he has on the 1.5-mile tracks right now. And the good news is that randomly came to me that I don't think we run a mile-and-a-half again until Atlanta at the end of September. So that's good for those who aren't fond of that racing, but Keselowski probably is a little sad because he's been really great on those type of tracks so far in 2014.
The race was pretty, I'm going to just say it, boring at times, but there was action early in the race. Lap 27, a cut tire sends Denny Hamlin hard into the outside wall. He took his time getting out of the car. It looked a little beat up, worse for the wear. I'm almost wondering out loud if that back injury is still plaguing him even after about a year of recovery.
It was definitely a really hard hit. You could tell by what Jeff Gordon said. He was like, wow, that, like on the radio, I'm pretty sure he was just like, wow, that was a really hard hit that Hamlin took. So it was definitely probably not the classic tire goes down in the wall. He probably had a shot more directly in the wall than we usually see with those incidents. And definitely the back problems they may have come up. I think every hard hit he probably takes, he feels that little on his back right after or the next day. So I think until he really fully gets some time off to recover from just giving his back some more rest, I think until that comes, he won't be able to probably rack without feeling a little bit in his back. He needs to probably just relax just a little more in the off season, and maybe that problem will slowly go away over time.
That's the thing right there. You almost got to wonder if he has to take a significant amount of time off. I can't think that jumping in the car and each week running the risk of re-injuring himself or doing further damage is going to be good for Denny Hamlin's long-term health, but hey, he has a physician, and if they've signed off on him going back in the car, I guess that's what he's going to do. We're going to turn our focus on another organization, the Richard Childress organization specifically, and I just have to say, to me, they are really flying under the radar this year. They have Ryan Newman, who finished third this past weekend at Kentucky. He's sitting 8th in points. He doesn't have a win yet, and we're coming up to tracks that are really up his wheelhouse. But then as of late, Paul Menard's been running really well. He's 11th in points, and Austin Dillon sits 18th, and he's struggled kind of up and down in his rookie season. This was a team that was kind of left for dead at the end of last season with Kevin Harvick leaving with not only his driving talent behind the wheel, but taking some sponsorship with him. Insert Ryan Newman. And I really think that this organization is doing a lot better than many expected.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm just not hesitant to say that they're really flying under the radar and doing really well until they get that one win, because as of now, we can get 16 different winners. They don't have one of those 16 if we got 16 as of now, if that makes any sense. But so they're still looking for that win. I think that one win will really help their case, saying how really strong they've been this season despite not having the top championship contender in Harvick like they've had for the last so many years. So I'm looking for them to get a win. You said Newman, he's got really strong tracks coming up. I bet Newman's the one to get it, but he won it Indy a few years ago, and Austinville. I think Austin's really just he could really get a victory anywhere. You don't really know where his strengths are, and he could come in and maybe win one of those fuel mileage races. So I think they are on the risk of getting a win, and once they do, definitely say how great their season's going.
Paul Menard is a real mystery to me. I'm not sold completely on his skill set as a driver. He turns in, like I said, a few good runs the past couple of weeks, and then he seems to disappear every so often. I don't associate him with anyone who's going to pick up anything more than just that one win that he already has 3 years ago.
Yeah, I don't know where he would win if he did win, but he's just really consistent this season. So, that could turn into something maybe by end of August. He could maybe put that consistency to work, but it's just, don't really know with him what he's going to do next week or even in the next month or so.
Luckily, Jason, at the Kentucky Speedway, our worst fears were not realized. It was Kentucky. This has been the site of the past 2 years of KFC commercials going on and on and on and on during the race broadcast. I started to try to tally up when they showed KFC commercials this year, and it was far and few between. It was almost like a normal race. So, Jason, what does that say about TNT's coverage, that it seems like a little too late they've smartened up to people's objection to being run into the ground with some advertisers?
I think it's just smart TV. Maybe they had personnel changes over the last few years since whenever the KFC commercials on, they really bombarded us with those. So I think it's just smart on their part not doing that, because they know fans didn't like it then, and if they did it again, they'd probably just turn their TVs off and just throw the remote against the wall, because it definitely was not a popular move by them a few years ago.
Jason, do you know offhand, and I haven't heard anything, and I can't think if I've heard or seen anything, are they going to run the wide open coverage this weekend at Daytona like they have the past couple of years?
I don't think they did it last year, and I think that was just because they didn't really want to, and they want to shorten the commercial space. So I don't think it's coming this year. I haven't heard anything about it, and usually they advertise it really well. I think 2012 with Roger, they actually did it, and they really advertised it well. So I don't see it coming. I wish they did it because it was great, but I think it'll just be a typical race, and it wasn't like they were going to miss some of the greatest action like they usually do when Richard Childress races on, because you never know when something's going to happen. So that's going to really hurt, but I think the wide open coverage would definitely been a little better, because I would have liked to see it.
With TNT leaving this year, they're 4 races into their 6-race swing. I have to say I have been extremely disappointed with their coverage. It's almost making me want to go back to Fox right now. I'm going to try to put together a rundown after their conclusion and do some grades or something like that. But, Jason, I got to just say, overall, it's sloppy broadcasting. That's the best terminology I could come up with. I just point to, in the booth, Adam Alexander is usually a really good host and just running the show for a race, but at times he honestly sounds a little lost as to what to talk about. Then you have Wally Dallenbach and Kyle Petty, who equally they seem unsure of what to chime in, and then when they start talking about stuff, it can be out in left field. And Dallenbach in particular, he's been doing this for the last 13 years, and I feel like he's really regressed this year as far as inappropriate comments or not so much inappropriate comments, but just laughing about troubles for other drivers. It's just puzzling to me that they've been doing this for X amount of years, and it all seems like they're just letting it go here at the end and knowing that it's the last time that they'll be on TV.
Yeah, you can definitely pick up on that throughout all the races so far, and I would say it's just maybe a mentality of, I don't care, we're not coming back next year. We'll do our best, but it's not like we're going to put out the best. We're not going to do the best we can just because it just doesn't really matter because we're not going to be here next year. So that could play into it, but I don't know. I just wish they could maybe regroup and bring their A game for the next two races, because they want, if their overall reputation, they want fans to, say that they want TNT wasn't awful. I think they probably need to pick it up in these last 2 weeks.
And here's what I've been struggling with all day before coming into this podcast, is I started watching the 1992 Pepsi 400 this morning, and I was just enamored I got through 40 laps. I was paying attention with it. I was not getting distracted by Twitter or anything like I would like during a normal race. I can't figure out what it is. If it was the announcers that they had back then, that one was an ESPN broadcast with Bob Jenkins, Ned Jarrett, and Benny Parsons, or it might be just the nostalgia factor that I just enjoy watching these drivers who I grew up watching race. I can't put my finger on it, but it was by definition, the most boring racing there could be. There was single file. It was two cars with about a second lead over the next pack of two or three cars who had a second lead over the next couple. No side-by-side racing. It wasn't even close to the competition that we have nowadays. But nowadays, I am easily distracted by anything when a race is on. Well, this, I was just focused in. It was just absolutely weird.
Yeah, that's definitely something odd, and I can't really pinpoint what it is or how come. It's just something weird. I think part of it might be Daytona, and that's what my part would be if it's Daytona. Definitely not on Twitter when the racing's on at Daytona. During commercial, I'll check the commercial on every once in a while, but when there's cars on the track and TNT's showing them, I'll definitely be eyes on the race because anything can happen at any second. So it makes it a little more interesting than the mile-and-a-half tracks where every half hour or so maybe there's something that's happened, but Daytona, it could be any second, which just makes it a little more interesting. After Brad Keselowski's dominant performance at Kentucky, he landed on top of my power rankings, but right second, right behind Jimmy Johnson, who's been really strong and can show it wasn't as strong in Kentucky, but he's just been so consistent this month because he's doing well, and that's probably why he's still on top in both of our rankings. I had Johnson second and Gordon third, and Gordon, he's just been so consistent, and just surprised me because I didn't really pick up on it until the last few weeks, but he's been consistent, average, top 10 finishes, right around top 5, so that's why I think he's going to turn into quite a championship contender because he's got the consistent finishes, he's right there, and he's probably going to break through in victory lane in the next few months or so.
That being said, Gordon got bumped out of my power rankings. Well, he has the consistency, even has the point lead on his side. It's just statistically he's not coming up as good as other drivers, such as, drumroll, Jimmy Johnson I have ranked first. He's just been on a tear the last few races. He's been doing everything that he needs to do to not only get back in the points battle, but shoot on the top of my power rankings. Brad Keselowski, that dominating performance, that was a lot of points that I use for power rankings is based off of laps led and completed. So getting 199 of 267 laps led, that's going to give him a lot of points and shot him up to second in my power rankings. And third behind Keselowski, I have Kevin Harvick. When he's been on track, he's been a dominating force. Now he's getting snake bit by pit stop problems. They got to figure it out at Stewart-Haas Racing, but like I said, when he's on track, he's doing everything that he can to get the points that I use towards the power rankings there.
Now we jump into talking about some Coke Zero 400, the upcoming race this weekend at Daytona. This is one of my favorite race weekends of the year. 4th of July, we'll see a bunch of patriotic paint teams out there. And side note, Jimmy Johnson's running his Aragon, the one he ran at Charlotte about a month ago, and that's probably one of my all-time favorite teams. Just looks really good on the track, and I love the color. So he'll be running that scheme. Other drivers got the patriotic schemes for the plays into how much I like the race, and it's always interesting under the lights. It's going to be hot out, and really anything can happen, just like all other Daytona races. It's the anyone's game, and to get these in the chase this year, you've got to win. So you've got to open the field, open the chances to just about anyone in the field taking the victory this weekend, because they need one to get in the chase, and this is the perfect opportunity to get a win that could really go to anybody, as we've said in the other great races this season.
Now, jumping back to your first point about the paint scheme, I agree with you. Love the patriotic schemes, but I do have to say one of the worst paint schemes I have ever seen in my life is going to be driven by your boy Kyle Busch. That is horrendous what he has going on with interstate batteries, with the stripes, green stripes, white. It's just a lot going on there.
Yeah, it is, and I actually really enjoyed his schemes that he's run in the past, Coke 0400 races, which are like gold and green mixed together, which I think looks really nice. But definitely the stripes, he's going to be like a zebra out there, which is probably not what they're going for, but that'll be interesting, and we'll wait to see if they bring that back again, see if the fans' opinion of it really goes into play at all.
Again, going nostalgia, I really want to see them run the old-timey green and black paint schemes that Dale Jarrett and Bobby Labonte ran in the early 90s. And even speaking about that, I was watching the 92 Pepsi 400, as I said earlier, and it was crazy to think that they ran this race during the daytime. I think it was normally 11 a.m. start, but even so, they were talking in the broadcast that it was about 120 degrees out there. Absolutely crazy that they would race under those conditions. Very smart move, putting it at night, putting it under the lights gives it that cool effect like you were talking about, Jason. And you're right, makes it a very unique race to have on the schedule. And as you said, this is going to be not only a great place for someone to make that last-ditch effort to try to get into the chase, and David Reagan comes to mind winning Talladega last year, but it even might be the place where someone like Austin Dillon or Kyle Larson, one of the rookies, might break through. I know Justin Allgaier is another driver who has a lot of confidence coming into this race. Getting a win not only would help them with their rookie season and their maturation in the Sprint Cup Series, but at the same time gives you all sorts of confidence for the team and could get you into the chase, which would be a total game changer for some of these teams.
And that's another reason why we really enjoy restricted plate racing, because the smaller drivers who aren't with the best of the best teams, they have a really great chance to get into victory lane and be successful to get their spot in the chase, which makes it one of the most interesting races, especially right now with we're about, I want to say, 8 or so races from the chase, so it definitely adds an element to it. And one thing you said about 500, you want a little more off, let's start over there. One thing you said about the 500 seeing it run under the lights, and you might want to see that. Notice in the 500 in February that they ran under the lights, and their action was really intense, but that is part due to the rain that was threatening the whole entire time. So I think this is just random back to your 500 point, but if they ran under the lights, I would love if the weatherman just said it's going to rain in 20 laps, so maybe it'll rain in 40 laps. So we see some of the most, because that 500 is really intense, and I like that. And I hope we see some of that kind of racing tonight, but without, I think, the chance of rain that ending the race, I think that's what made it so exciting in February. And I'd love to see it again this weekend, but I'm not too confident we'll see as great a racing.
NASCAR sees the formula in getting great racing is the threat of rain, and the race could be stopped at any time. We saw that at Daytona, like you said, and Bristol was another race where it seemed the competition was ratcheted up just more so than normal, which was hard to believe, but yeah, without the threat of rain, I think we're going to see a lot of guys riding around there, especially drivers that maybe have a win, don't want to sacrifice, any sort of injury or anything like that. If they're already confident that they're guaranteed in, you might see, though, on the other hand, late in the race, some drivers trying to make some moves. Again, going back to our point, thinking that this might be their only way into the chase.
And one thing I'm not a fan fan of restricted play racing is that we'll get down to 20 and 10 laps to go, and the drivers who are in the back will probably need to make moves to get up top if they could win the race, and that win would be huge for them. They don't make a move. It's just like we saw last year at Talladega in the fall that they were single file until turn 2 on the last lap, and you just think that the drivers who are way back in the field, they had their chance to make a move, and they didn't even want to make it. So I'm really hoping we don't see drivers just hanging out at the end and not really going for it. I really hope we see them all going for the win and doing their best to really make their move through the small hole openings we'll see in the field to get up front and contend for that win, because it's going to be a huge win for whoever takes the victory on Saturday night.
That's the hardest part about this chess match, is just, do you go with 5 laps to go, risking that if you made the wrong decision, you drop all the way to the back of the pack, or do you try to hold on until 2 or 1 lap to go, and then a giant crash happens behind you and you haven't started making your move yet and the race is over? One of the many things that we enjoy about restrictor plate racing. So Jason, this weekend, who do you got going to victory lane?
I have got Tony Stewart. He won here 4 times in his career in July, and he won last one in 2012. He finished second to Jimmy Johnson last year, and this is his race. He's just so good here. This is basically where he turns his season around usually. If he's like he's had in the past, he hasn't had a great start to the season, but summer comes, and his summer starts a little later in July, I guess, but he just absolutely starts to be really dominant, and I think that he may not turn into the dominant after this race, but I think he'll gain some confidence if he's able to get the victory line and really propel through the rest of the season and really get back to his old form, since he hasn't really been that way since his sprint car crash last year.
I'm going with the recycled name. He's already visited victory lane at Daytona this year. I'm going with Dale Earnhardt Jr. He won the Daytona 500, like I mentioned earlier, to kick off the year. 3 wins total at Daytona, only 1 coming in the 400 race in July, that being 2001. 11 top 5, 17 top 10s, and 29 starts. 13 and change average finish, 450 laps led. I think Junior's got the right mental attitude going into this race. He's confident. The Hendrick cars are going to be really strong, given that how dominant Jimmy Johnson was a year ago. I just see good things happening for that organization and Junior in specific at this event.
It's going to be one heck of a race weekend, and we always love seeing these Daytona races because they're always intense and they're going to be full of action, so you don't want to miss those races on Friday and Saturday night, and it's going to be some fireworks on the track for the 4th of July.
Absolutely. Night races make it so you can do your barbecues and hang out during the day, and you don't get to miss any racing action.
Thanks for listening to the Fan3Cast. For more NASCAR coverage, check out StartingParkBlog.com and Turn4RacingNews.com. Follow along on Twitter at Fan3Cast, at StartingParkBlog, and at NASCARJason.